All right, Sid, and we are going to introduce Grant Leber, guys. I'm going to read this off. Sid, if you can find Grant on here and just pin his or highlight his video, I'll highlight myself up here, spotlight myself, bring Grant up here with me. I want to read this off. He sent this in an email for an introduction. Man, I read this and I'm like, holy crap, this guy's just so freaking good. All right, so Grant started in June of 2016. As a 21-year-old college student, started building an agency in 2018, became an agency owner in August of 18, agency director in 2019, and regional agency director in 2020. He hit elite producer last year, and he averages, get this, averages between 40 and 50,000 a month in personal production. Let that sink in. We're like mind blown when we have people hit 20 plus, and Grant's kicking here 40 to 50 a month in personal production. As an agency last year, they did 2.3 million, and they're now doing 200 to 250,000 a month. He just hit recently within the last month or two his 125% contract level. One more to go to 130. And I am so excited. Sid, any luck grabbing him and spotlighting the video?
It won't allow me to. Well, I had him spotlighted, but once you spotlighted yourself, it removed him.
Oh,
but you know what, Jim? I like this. I get to look at you, and you're prettier, so it's totally fine, man. This is good. I like you on widescreen.
This is way too much of me. I got to figure out how to pull this up. All right, where are you at, Grant? I want to find you here. Gonna scroll. There we go. Let's see if we can add spotlight. There we go.
All right, there we go.
I like it.
Split screen.
Here we go. Grant, man, I read over those numbers and there are some mind-blowing things. I mean, I come from a team building background. Building teams comes so naturally for me. Sales was a hard thing for me to learn. Production is still something that I don't like. When we talk about our own insecurities and that kind of thing, I have deal with my own insecurities and like I can help brand new people learn to produce, but I'm not really good at taking them to the next level or even showing them what's possible. So connecting with people like you that are doing what for me is like mind-blowing stuff is really, really super cool. So what I want to do is kind of just turn this over to you. Give us your story. What brought you here? What are you doing that's winning now? And at some points, I might just like time out, pause you, ask for clarification, have you dig in. But for the most part, just kind of share with us what you're doing and what's working and how you do what it is you do.
Yeah, well, sure, man. First of all, I really appreciate the invite. I mean, we're always looking at what you guys are doing from afar, and we're blown away by the numbers you have and just the amount of people you've been able to assemble and have success on a big scale has been super cool. But Grant Leber directed Josh and Danielle Hershey, part of the Miller Puckett Wayland organization, and I started. Yeah, as you mentioned, we just passed 8 years. I was a college student. You know, my whole upbringing was really around. My dad was kind of a serial entrepreneur. I saw him being involved in all these different business transactions, and I was really attracted to that. I knew that like being self-employed, I knew kind of having my own business was really my future. The 9 to 5 just wasn't really for me. I couldn't see myself climbing the corporate ladder when I, was in college, and I saw other people kind of getting those internships and starting down that path. And so I found this on a Craigslist ad. So for those of you that found this on a Craigslist ad, found this on, something kind of one of those cold market sources, you can come in here and win at a high level, and you can find people that can come in and win at a high level. And so I was probably a $25 or $30 Craigslist ad, and I got started part-time while I was finishing up school. I didn't come in like writing 50 grand a month. That certainly didn't happen. I was probably generating 8 to 10,000 in APV part-time my first 6 months, making, whatever that was at the time. We were at a lower commission back in those days, 3 or 4 grand a month. And at that time, being 21, making 3 or 4,000 a month, I was the mayor. That was some good income. And then I graduated, went full time, got into producing 15 to 20,000 a month back in the days when we actually got in our cars and met with people face to face. So I was making 8, 10, 11, 12 grand a month, somewhere in that range. And then 2018 is when I did start really getting intentional about building the agency. We were able to hit agency owner there probably about 9 months in August, once I really got serious about building. And, the journey here over these last few years has definitely been one of, me really producing at a way higher level than I ever anticipated that I would. And I think a big part of, like, you ask what creates that success, digital leads and switchboard is really the main thing that I personally point to. When I got, mortgage protection leads, I had to make a lot of phone calls. Like, I kind of struggled with, I wouldn't say I struggled with it. I was consistent with it, but, I don't know how, if I had to go back in the time machine 6 years ago, how I could be a 40 or 50,000 a month producer. I don't think I could. I think the tools we have nowadays have made it easier than ever to produce at that level. A big part of it is that I get to book so many of my appointments over text, which I'm happy to break down and talk about. I'm able to be so much more efficient with my calendar because of how the leads are sourced and the way that I work them. And just because of the simplicity of them, buying behavior has really changed over these last 8 years. People don't want the whole dog and pony show. People don't want the full presentation. They don't want you to show up with your briefcase and pull out some crazy trifold thing. Like, they want to very quickly be able to make a buying decision, and they would prefer to not have to talk to an agent at all. That's why they requested this information online. And so that's why being able to text, being able to very effectively write policies in just a matter of minutes has kind of been my strong suit, just because of the ability to pivot quickly, the ability to very quickly find somebody's need and then find a solution for them. So I'm very grateful to the Switchboard platform that has come out. Very grateful to have found digital leads. Whether that's on the Lighthouse, the Razor Ridge, the Level Up lead platform, they all work. But the one thing I would just say before I definitely want to answer any questions you got is, the number one thing that makes a consistent $5,000 a week producer is that they sit with 10 people. We've heard the owners talk about this time in, time out. That's the number one thing. You need to present to 10 people. Now, some people mistake that because they go, oh, well, I booked 10 appointments, but then they sat with 4 people and then they wrote one policy and then they wonder why they didn't get the results they thought. Well, I'm not talking about booking 10. I'm talking about sitting with 10 presentations, rapport, emotion, the whole reel script all the way through 10 times over. And if you can do that every single week, you are guaranteed to, on an ongoing basis, assuming you're working on getting better, help anywhere from 3 to 5 people a week and get your 5,000 plus APV. And so then you figure out, well, okay, how do I scale up from there? Well, the difference is just that instead of sitting with 10, if I sat with 15, well, that puts me in a position where now I can be a 7,500 to 10,000 a week producer. And then how do people write more than 10 grand a week? The reason I write more than 10 grand a week is I sit with 20 plus people a week. I generally have about 35 appointments scheduled every single week. I usually have about 8 or 9 a day, Monday through Thursday. And that's how I'm able to produce the level that I'm doing. So yes, my conversion ratios are high. Yes, my close ratios are high, but really it's just I book 2 to 3 times more appointments than the average agent does. And that's why I write 2 to 3 times as much business.
Man, that's so good. And I love that you hit the 3 digital lead sources. Do you have a preference, or are you just kind of equal opportunity, whatever works for you, they all work?
So when Razor was the first one that came out, so Razor Ridge was kind of, the new kid on the block. That was what I did very consistently. And then Lighthouse came out. I transitioned into that as kind of a 50-50. And then I have reverted back to Razor full time. I have tried level up leads. I think that if we were to look at what's the difference between the three of them, the level up leads, I think are leads that, to be fair, I've only worked for a couple months, so I don't have a ton of data. They're a little bit less expensive. They require a little bit more nurturing. So I think for maybe a newer person getting into digital, they do provide a really good value proposition. They are going to take a little bit more dials, a little bit more text to get that interest. With a Razor Ridge, and there's a couple different types. There's a Razor Ridge training, social mix, and then Google search lead. Most people, when they refer to Razor, are talking about the social mix lead, which is going to be that middle ground $42.50 lead. That is the one that I exclusively work. I have found that the difference with Lighthouse and Razor Ridge is almost negligible. Once the appointment is booked, they are very high intent leads, both of them. The difference is just based on your contract level. You may have a lower cost of doing Lighthouse, and therefore I might recommend that you do that. The other thing is just you'll notice some subtle texting differences when you are working these leads. The automation is a little bit different, but it's not much. For example, Lighthouse, they send one automation text when a lead first comes in. With Razor Ridge, they kind of send the first one and then they send a follow-up one. So it's just a slightly different way that you work them initially. But what I have agents on my team, I have my buddy Cody Kennel. He's running agency owner. He works 25 Lighthouse leads a week. He writes 30 to 40,000 a month. He's never touched any other one. He's never touched Razor or Level Up. I personally only work with Razor exclusively these days, working about 26 of them per week. And that's kind of the exclusive leads that I work just because I've found a rhythm with them. So, what I would tell anybody is if you're working one lead type and you're having success, don't make a change because you heard someone say this is shiny over here. But if you're not having the success you want, let's talk about your process before we work on maybe changing the lead source.
Yeah, that's really good. What is your conversion rate from leads purchased to appointments set? What
Yep.
percentage of your leads are you getting at least set, if not like set, as if even if you don't sit with them, how many are you engaging with on a percentage basis?
So my goal is to get 75 to 80% resolution. So
Yep.
my goal at every pass through is for like 75%. So for example, if I got 26 Razor Ridge a week, my goal is to get about 20 of those to be an appointment. Out of those 20, I want to sit with 75%, so that's 15, and then out of those 15, I want to write 75, which is 10 apps a week. So earlier when I mentioned that I do 30 apps a week, that's because there's follow-up, there's referrals. So of those 26 a week that I get, there's buildup in there. So every week there's 5 or 10 additional people that kind of come of it. But that's really my goal is 75% pass through from lead to appointment to sit to write the policy.
And you said you do a lot through text.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. How reliant are you on the auto cadences, and how manually aggressive are you?
Yeah. I am hyper aggressive with texting. That I think is the thing that I'm not afraid to be. And I send text in a very friendly, playful, relational way. So when you look at the automation that first comes out, there's a couple different engagement points that we have with these leads. So some leads, you'll have the first text or first couple texts go out that's automation, and then they'll immediately respond to you. When they immediately respond to you, I have a 4-step process that I use for how to book the appointments, which I'm happy to give you the rundown on that. But so I find that there's an engagement point there. And I would say that of the leads I get, probably 30% of them are responding to the initial text that's coming in, and I'm able to basically go back and forth with them and fairly quickly book an appointment over text. The other 50%, I don't know when I'm going to get a hold of them. I could get a hold of them on text 3 or text 30. I could get a hold of them on phone call 3 or phone call 30. I don't know. But I know that of those leads, there's another 50% of them that are going to get back with me. And then I know there's another 20% that are going to be very unresponsive. They might never get back to me. So that's something we just have to like be okay with. There is a percentage that you're just not going to get. So of the texting, I definitely let the automation run if I haven't gotten a response, but I believe that the automation is only going to be effective of getting somebody to get back to you within the first couple days. After about 3 or 4 days, your manual texting is about the only way that you're going to get them on the phone or your manual calling. So what I really like to do is I like to lead with what I know. So, for example, if I have a digital lead, I know their name, I know their age, I know if they smoke or not, I know how much coverage they wanted, and then they answered that security question of like, what's your favorite hobby? So, whenever I text them, I always want to lead with what I know because that provides credibility. So, if it's a day or two has gone by, and you haven't responded back to me, I'd be like, hey, Jim, just checking in. Did you still want options for that $250,000 of coverage you had requested? And then they're like, okay, well, and keep in mind, everyone is reading your text. Everyone is seeing what you're sending. Everybody, like, very few people have just unread text messages. So you have to keep in mind, these people are seeing what you're saying. And if you're not saying something captivating, then they're knowingly ignoring you. So you have to win that battle of being interesting enough for them to respond. So I like to be interesting by providing credibility about who I am, and then I know their information and that they asked for it. And then as I go along, I'm consistently reaching out. Hey, I have your address is this. Hey, I have you're 32 and a non-smoker. Is that right? Hey, I show that you requested this amount. Is that correct? And these are texts that I'm sending, and they may not be responding to me. I'm like having a conversation with myself, and I find that eventually they do pick up and they do respond. And then once I get to the point where I'm maybe 5 to 7 days out, I start sending memes. I've there's a ton that are in the Switchboard Facebook group. I love the one of like it's the skeleton. It says still waiting on your call back. There's this like old lady like looking at her computer, squinting at it, and it says, are you there? I love that one. And I'll send like just the eyes emoji, like just a pair of a couple eyes, like are you there? And this kind of stuff, it's going to help you get people to reach back out to you. And like if I think of it as if I was engaging a friend of mine and a friend of mine reached out to me and said, hey man, my family needs life insurance. Can you get me a quote? Well, how would I text them? I wouldn't text them like a stuffy 3-piece suit. Well, okay, Jim, I'd be honored to get you a quote. Could you please provide these detailed pieces of information? I'll get an option out to you. I'd be like, yeah, bro, I got you. How old are you? What do you want? Do you have any health conditions? Do you have this? Do you have that? And then if you ghosted me, I would be sending you silly stuff. I'd be like, what's going on? Like, what, would you not love me anymore? Like, so I just have that kind of playful relationship with my clients as if we already have a relationship, and then it makes it where that relationship really kind of flows. And then when it comes to kind of texting, just to kind of clarify the manual versus automation, my goal is to call them and text them manually once every single day for 3 weeks. Now, I will tell you in full transparency that I have so many leads coming in that I personally handle the texting, and I do have some assistance with an appointment setter that does some calling. So a lot of you that are like, how can you book 35 appointments a week? Yes, I do have some help on that. Want to be transparent. But if you're someone who's working 10, 15, 20 leads per week, and maybe you're just getting yourself up and running or working on that, you're totally capable. You totally have the time to call through and get that resolution.
Yeah, that's so great, man. I love the playful attitude. I love the assuming your friends, engaging with them as if you like already have the connection. And then all you're asking for them to do is just meet you halfway. Like you've already provided like the easy nature. They just need to respond to it, man. That's super good.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I was so a lot of people reach out to me and they say, "Hey, like I've got all these leads and they've just never got back to me. They've never texted me back. They've never answered a phone call. Like, do you have like, are you getting the special leads and I'm getting like the not so special leads?" And I'm like, "No, it's let's look at what you've done." And so I'll jump on a switchboard with them and we'll look at their text messages. And I feel like every single one is this just kind of like generic stuffy one. I had this one of my agents. She was texting this guy every day for 12 days in a row. He had never responded. And I told her to send this text. I said, send him this text. Hey, Jim, I'm really sorry if I offended you. That was not my intention. I was just trying to get that coverage out to you that you'd requested. Is that still important to you? She got like 4 people to text her back right then and there. We booked like 2 appointments while she was still on Zoom with me. And we looked at what the text I suggested versus what she'd sent. And there's a total, like, it's still the same format, but it's a total different in tonality, in approach, in relationship.
Man, really good. You said that you have a 4-step process for booking an appointment. And immediately I'm like, yeah, we absolutely want to know that 4-step process. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, you got it. Okay. So the initial text goes out. This is the one that's manual. They respond back with something like yes, or text me, please, or okay. My first text is verifying their age and if they smoke. So I'd go, okay, I show that you're 34 and a non-smoker, right? So text 1 is verifying age and health. They say yes. Second text or I'm sorry, my first text is age and smoker, not health. Second text is health. And what I say is, do you have any health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, or cancer? So I just ask those four things: high blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, or cancer. Those are kind of the four, four hot buttons for a lot of people. Now, this is one potential red flag. When I ask that health question, which is my second text, I don't care what they say. I keep going to my third text. I don't care if they say I don't have any health conditions or they say I'm on my deathbed with stage 4 cancer. Like, I don't care what they say. I'm moving on. And reason being is, number one, I don't want to make somebody feel bad because they have a health condition. And number two, I want to make sure that my messaging stays in line with the ad that they saw. If you all have seen or paid attention to kind of the ads that people have responded to, they're responding to an ad that says something like, you can get up to $1 million with no medical exams or regardless of your health conditions. So now, if I'm drilling them over text about their specific health conditions, it doesn't build a congruent message. And now they're thinking, like, okay, maybe this is more of a hassle than I thought. I already know that I have some health conditions. I thought this guy was going to be different. Now he's like everybody else. So I really do not recommend that you dig into health questions over text, because we all know that you're going to get on the phone with them and you're going to have to unpack that over a conversation anyway. So, first text, okay, I show you're 52 and a non-smoker. Yeah, perfect. Do you have any health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, or cancer? Yes or no? And then I say, how much coverage you're looking for. So text number 3 is how much coverage you're looking for. Now, I already know that they said, I want 200,000, I want 50,000, whatever. I don't address that. I want to ask an open-ended question. Now, I know I contradicted something I said earlier where I mentioned that I might text them and say, you said you wanted 250, is that right? Now, that's only in an instance where they haven't texted me back and I'm trying to build credibility because I'm showing something that they provided me. In the instance that they have responded, I ask them open-ended, how much coverage you're looking for. We all know that who's got that 70-year-old that asked for a $500,000, right? That digital lead, they're 70, they want a 500,000, they want 250, right? So I don't like backing myself into a corner of them showing up and me expecting to help that 70-year-old with 500,000. It's not going to happen. So I asked that open-ended, how much coverage do you want? And then they say whatever, 50, 100, 200, whatever the case may be. And then my fourth question, and this is how I avoid one-legged appointments, I say, are you looking to cover anyone else or just yourself? Are you looking to cover anyone else or just yourself? I'm trying to identify any potential decision makers that could be there. I'm trying to see if maybe they do had it on their mind to get like kids policies or whatever the case may be. And then they'll usually just say, no, just me. And then my fifth text is the booking. So it's basically 4 text and then booking. And then the booking text is, all right, Jim, that's all the info I need. Just because there's a couple different ways that I could help you get protected, I did want to hop on a quick 5-minute phone call. Would it be best to do that in the morning, afternoon, or evening? You say morning, I say I got 9:30 or 11:30, you say 11:30, and then I book it on Switchboard. I like using Switchboard for booking. It puts it on my calendar. It immediately sends them a text that says, all right, you're booked for tomorrow at 11:30, and then they get an email, and then they get a text 30 minutes before. That really helps my show factor. So that's my 4-step method.
That's really good, man. What would you say was your biggest struggle when you were learning production? What was the hardest? Everyone has different hard things, right? Like, I've got brand new people where the phone itself weighs 1,000,000 pounds, and the idea of interrupting someone is so hard. Or just getting the appointment locked down or closing. Like, people have different issues in the space. What was the hardest for you?
I don't know, man. It's like, so I was never afraid of the presentation. I always loved that. I knew if I can get on the phone with them, I'd be okay. Um, the biggest thing I had to overcome early on is asking for the sale. Like, that was probably my biggest thing. Like, I'd show options and I was like, okay if they didn't pick them, because I somehow felt good about the fact that I just had a presentation to begin with. And so I would just say, like, I would count things that didn't count. I would celebrate wins that weren't wins. Like, and don't get me wrong, because if you meet with somebody and you didn't write them a policy and you learn something and you can overcome it, that's a win. But a lot of times we kind of like who's got on the phone and they've started to make dials and they didn't book appointments, but they felt good about themselves because they at least got on the phone and made dials. you're like, that's a win. We want to celebrate that, but you didn't make any money. You're if you number one rule of business is to stay in business. And so if you're not generating income, you're not going to be in business for long. So I would say that was probably my biggest pitfall is I was kind of going through the motions, but I wasn't intentional about like actually getting the result. And then but what I was intentional about, if you want to ask like oh, you're not asking, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. Like, what was I good at? What I was good at is I was reaching out and I was asking for help to figure out how to get better. And this is something that just totally dumbfounds me at this stage is how many resources we have and how few people utilize them. Like when I was getting ready to walk into a home, and this would be today if you're getting ready to call an appointment, well, I was talking to my mentor, or I was researching quotes, or I was studying sales scripts and things before I got on the phone to them. So I felt equipped for that conversation. I knew what I was going to do. And then when I was meeting with them, if I was in a situation where I didn't know what to do and I needed help, I'd reach out to my mentor, my upline, or maybe I'd even call the carrier. And then after the appointment, if I wrote the policy, I'd call my mentor and be like, hey, man, I wrote the deal. And we'd be like, that's awesome. Go get the next one. Or if I didn't write it, we would talk about where that went off the rails. And
Mm,
just, I think the reason why people that have been here for a while and they haven't got the results they wanted is they're either missing on the aspect of, I just don't do enough upfront activity. I don't have enough leads. That's pretty easy to diagnose. But sometimes what's not as easy to diagnose, it's a blind spot, is do you think that you're the best you could be? Like some people get to the point where they feel like they maybe could get more leads and they can book more appointments, but maybe they've maxed out their like ability to help families. And I think that's an art form that we maybe just need to work on. Like we need to work on the fact that if you sit with 10 people a week and you're writing 4, you can write 8 because 8 of them are capable of buying policies and are interested. You just didn't do the right things to get those other 4 people ready to make a buying decision today.
mm,
So I think that's a big missing piece there is just, are you doing kind of the post-mortem? Are you reaching out? Are you asking for help? Are you figuring out after the fact, how do I get better? And last thing I'll leave you with before I turn you back is, I've had, so many agents, I'm sure you have, and the leaders on this have as well, that maybe thought somebody got it and you're like, you know what, you're writing consistent business, you're doing okay, like I like your format, I like your flow. And then maybe randomly, like you decide, hey, let's, do you mind sending me your presentation? Do you mind sending me a recording of it? And you listen to it and you go, oh my gosh, what did you do? You are totally off. Like you started here on home plate and then we just drifted off onto left field and now we're going down the third base line and now you're out in left field. And it's like, where did you make all these little changes? And what sometimes people do, which is just natural human behavior, is you can make a 1% improvement to go up and to the right, but you can also make a 1% incorrect move and you could be way off down to the left. And so I think that's part of inspecting what you expect for yourself. Have you looked at the numbers that you should expect? Number one, do you know the numbers? Do you know the conversion ratios? And then if you're seeing other people winning at a higher level, are you taking the steps to figure out how to fill those holes in the boat?
man, that was a lot. Jill and Amber are both like, man, this hits. Love this. Um,
Yeah.
man, I had a question too, and then it was so good. Um, oh, what resources? You said we've got a ton of resources now. When you were coming up, what were the most important? It'll be twofold. What were the most important resources you had when you were coming up? And then, second question off of that, with all that we have today, what are the significant ones that you're pointing your new agents to in order to get better now?
Okay. So, there's so I would say that the biggest thing for when I first started is our presentation scripts really have not changed hardly at all. Like the best script and the real script are essentially the exact same. Yeah, we had Jeremy Minor kind of revamp it. Yes, me, Paige, and Gino actually wrote a general life script, which I want to plug because it's on HQ under training scripts. The general life script is very, very effective if you're running digital leads. You can be able to get into an application in 20 minutes or less and help out, 75% of the people you meet with if you follow it as it should be. But I would say the biggest resources were the audios. So like I was listening to John Ziller. I was listening to Miranda Miller. Miranda Miller. There's so many Millers, I just assume everyone is. Miranda Martin and John Ziller. I was listening to them like go through their sales process. And that was the biggest thing. Yeah, don't suck at sales is right now basically kind of the 2024 version of it. But like when you have somebody who's like in the zone and they're writing a lot of business, and they're on a training call and they're talking about what they do, an example like Lead Gen Leak It today, like those are the people you want to tune into. You want to tune into people like when they're at their prime, or a recording of them when they were at their prime. So like for me, I was hitting the Symmetry Financial Group SoundCloud. Many of you are probably like, we don't even know there was a
Don't
SoundCloud.
even know
There's a
SoundCloud now.
SoundCloud. You
Uh-huh.
Google Symmetry Financial Group SoundCloud. It's funny because you'll hear these audios of the owners from like 5 years ago, and you're gonna be like, they sound like totally different people. But that's a really good resource where there's a ton of good sales training. All the team calls that we do in Dropbox, of course, on HQ, they've got all the recorded sales training calls. I would say probably the biggest resource these days for people, especially with digital leads, is going to be that Thursday morning deep dive with the sales experts. Sean Lyons has done such an incredible job with that call, and there's really hard hitting content every week. So that was my deal. Like I just tried on a daily basis to listen to one of those audios because like it's one thing to read the script, but it's another to actually see people go through. And then you talk about like what are active resources? I'm sure your agency has something similar, but like virtual offices that we have where you can go in and live, listen to other people do it, and you can kind of have other people listen to you and give you some live training. Like that's a big part of just like being a professional and owning your craft. Like that's the biggest thing about what we're doing here. It's like, you're going to get paid based on, the effort you put in, number one, but then also the skill set that you develop. And like, you don't want to be a year into this business having to book 20 appointments a week to sit with 5 people to write 2 policies. Like, you want to get more efficient. So when we scale, like early on, you might have a problem of, I don't sit with 10 people a week, I sit with 5 a week. And I might say, well, the first thing you can do is buy twice as many leads and make twice as many dials. But once we get past that, we do have to work on these skill sets to get there. So I would say the audios were super crucial to me. And then, yeah, just a couple of those modern resources I would say would just be the Thursday deep dive is a great one. And recording yourself. Like it's so uncomfortable. I know people are probably cringing, like record myself and other people are going to listen to it. Uh-oh. Like get over yourself. This is a business. Do you want to be right or do you want to be rich, right? As they say. So it's kind of like record yourself and send it off to someone and have them listen to it and give you some feedbacks.
Man, that's good. I hope everyone here is taking notes, man. This is so good. So Grant, you're known as a producer. I mean, nationwide with this company. You co-wrote sales scripts, but you also have a thriving agency. You're a regional agency director. You're at 125%. Your agency's growing. It's thriving. You got one more step to 130. The question that I get all the time from people, and I'm sure you do too, how are you balancing growing an agency, being at 125% NRAD, and still producing at a high level? Like, how are you keeping all of those balls in the air, and what does navigating that balance look like for you?
Yeah. So this is so topical. Can I share something? Can I share a resource? Can I
Yeah,
share my
for
screen? Is
sure.
that cool? Okay, I'm gonna pull this up. I'm literally working on this right now with my performance coach, and it's called the Perfect Week. All right, let me share this. Okay. So this is like, and I'll be transparent that this is still a work in progress. But what I did is I'm trying to look at like these are all the things we got to fit into our calendar. There's recruiting, there's production, training, conference, and then there's the other stuff, which is physical health, mental relationships, and then me as a CEO working on my business. And so I really looked at my calendar and I tried to figure out like what can I optimize. And so I looked at my week and I go, okay, well, generally like 10 to 6 during the week, like at least Monday through Thursday, although there's a little bit on Friday, is kind of like my production heavy times. In the mornings is when I'm doing conference calls, I'm doing training, I'm doing my coaching. And so when I look at our business, I really think you can break it down to three sides. There's production, there's recruiting, and then there's mentoring. Those are the three phases of our business as I've kind of defined them. And so if I look at my production, well, the way that I've optimized it is as I've scaled up to buy more leads, number one, I've used texting to book appointments. Again, I don't know 6 years ago without being able to text our clients how I could run 35 appointments a week. I don't believe that would be possible without not building an agency as well. So that's one of the big tools. The second thing is hiring staff. So, you obviously are no stranger to leveraging other folks that can really help take things off your plate. I do have an appointment setter. So I don't make any outbound phone calls other than when I'm running an appointment to write a deal. So that's one thing that's really, really, taking some things off. Now, that being said, there are times where a lead might come in later in the evening. I might make that initial call. So that does happen. But generally speaking, all my appointments I'm handling over text, and then my dialer is handling by calling them if they don't respond to the text messages. Then when we look at like building, well, we switch to that model of doing group interviews. So instead of me doing 40, 50, 60-second interviews a week, I'm doing it in only 4 different group interview time slots. So that's really allowed me to scale that effectiveness with time. And then we've found onboarding calls and other calls, like there was just so many one-on-one calls that we did that we were able to consolidate. And then when it came to like working on my business, that's one thing that I'm really working on is I got a big sign right here that says be the chess player and not be the chess piece. So as you scale a business, that's what you got to figure out how to do, be the chess player and not the chess piece. And so I'm trying to figure out how can I have CEO think time with people on my team? How can I have weekly check-in calls with the people that are moving so I can help them get what they want, and we can work together to be, checking in on what goals they've set. And then I'm really intentional about like my recharge. Now, I'll be totally transparent that like my recharge is probably different from a lot of people. Like my recharge is not that I'm going to take a week off. My recharge is I'm going to go work this business in San Diego on the beach for a week. My recharge is I'm going to go do a travel trip. I'm going to go to the lake house. Like I get recharged from being able to be in different environments and do that. But for other people, that might be spending time with your family. That might be taking some intentional time off to really be able to reflect, to kind of chill, to kind of enjoy the fruits of your labor. So you got to fill that all in. And the other thing with this whole schedule thing is you got to let yourself off the hook. Like you got to let yourself off the hook a little bit when it comes to this pressure to like maybe perform at a particular level, or like, oh, if I'm not Jim Larson in 2 years or however long you've been here, I feel like you got here last week and you're already lapping me. It's like I got to get over that, and I got to compete, but I can't compare. Because if you get into the comparison game, you're just going to kill yourself with just that mental, just kind of stuffiness. But if you do get into the competition game, then you can have a lot of fun, and you can build some cool relationships. So anyway, buddy, I don't know. I'm still working out this week. I'm imperfect at it. I would say my schedule is definitely, even with some of the tools I have, too much lopsided to production. But you know what? Sometimes you're in that season. Like I did a national call a few weeks or a few months back at this point, where sometimes you're in a production season because you need that income to do what you got to do. Sometimes you're in a building season because you're running to agency owner. Sometimes you're in a mentoring season because you need to develop your sales skills to level, your mentorship skills to level up. So you just got to know where you're at, and give yourself some grace for those other areas that you might not be able to pay attention to.
So good, man. And that spot on comparing to, I'll tell you something. I told Jordan Shank this over lunch. I know I only came here 2 years ago, but for me, this was an 11-year journey of leaving my job and grinding and learning the skill set. So it came together that I could leverage a lot of lessons once I got here. But if you can pull this off to 130 and faster than 11 years, you beat me. And I think you've got a really good head start to do that. That's how I see it from my perspective, even though a lot of people are looking at me and like I feel like I just got here. For me, it's been an 11-year journey. And I don't think there's a faster way to do it. There's just too much I had to learn. We're coming up against time, but you said the word dialer, and that got a lot of antennas going up there, Jill and Joe specifically. So, 2 questions I want to ask you about the dialer. Where did you find a dialer? What does that role look like? But then secondly, who is the type of person, where would that person be in business that you would recommend they look for a dialer?
Yeah. Okay, so this is definitely a double-edged sword because you can invest the wrong leads and the wrong money and the wrong time in people that are not a good fit. So, I will tell you that my dialer is someone that I've probably had to go through 8 to 10 people before I found someone that I can consistently trust to convert leads at about the rate that I would. And we've all probably gotten, emails or text or whatever about other people that are appointment setters and, they want to be able to help us with that. And I'll guarantee you X amount of appointments. And that's not what you want to lean into. So what you want to look at for is, and this is whether I hire for a dialer, a recruiter, an admin, it's a former agent who has an understanding of our business. And for me, the dialer I have is someone who was very good at appointment setting, but struggled on the presentation. They always had a lot of appointments. They always had a good show factor, but they really just had they weren't very comfortable getting over that sales resistance. They maybe struggled with kind of presenting options and getting people to ask for that close. And so I'll tell you, the person who's my dialer is my 23-year-old kid brother. He is a dude who was great at booking appointments. He was never shy to dial, but he just has this mental roadblock about presentation. And while we're working through that, because I'd love for him to get the real money that's possible here to be an agent, at this point, I'm letting him be a dialer. I pay him 20 bucks an hour, plus I give him 5% of the policies I write that he books. So he's very well paid. He ends up booking like 5 to 7 appointments per hour, which is pretty crazy. But when you work like only brand new digital leads, it's not that hard. So, as I've gone through these dialers, what I've found is you always want to you want to lean by paying on performance as much as you can. You don't want to get caught paying an hourly or salary to someone who's not bringing in a expected return. You also want to really inspect what you expect about their results. If you're dialing a particular lead, you should set the expectation that, hey, on this lead type, you should book one appointment for every 4 people you speak with, for example, and you should be, looking at their numbers and their reports and holding them accountable to that. And the rule of thumb, and this is about delegating anything, is if somebody can do it 80% as good as you, hire that sucker out. Like that's the rule of thumb. So for me, as long as somebody else can do it 80% as good as I could if I was dialing, that's a great fit for me. So that would be my advice. We've all maybe known agents that maybe for whatever reason didn't end up making it. Maybe they struggled with their own ability to have the right amount of resources, but maybe they had a good work ethic and they maybe could be a good fit if they had enough leads to dial. I would look to those people. I would look to former agents that had really good work ethic, or I would maybe look to someone that isn't just afraid of rejection in the phones, but maybe could potentially struggle with more of the in-depth presentation stuff.
And who's the agent that should look to hire someone like this? Where are they? Where are they in their business that they should leverage someone else in that role?
So it needs to be, so that's another fair point. You should be at least on your own effort sitting with 10 people a week. If you're not at least on your own effort sitting with 10 people a week, then you're definitely not ready to hire a dialer. You need to optimize your skills to do that because if you're not sitting with 10 people a week, you're probably not running a profitable business to be able to bring on staff at that point. So I would probably lean on the point where you're doing 25,000 a month plus in production before this even became a blip on your radar.
Yeah, that's good. We're right up against time, Grant, and I want to honor your time especially, but all of our time here. So one last question before we go. What are you most excited about now in your business with Symmetry?
Man, I feel like I broke through a wall. Like I was at 120 for a really long time. And
Mm.
I was at 120 for a long time because we hadn't figured out a lot of our recruiting and onboarding things. We thought we had, but we were just really spinning our wheels. And I wasn't the type of leader that was capable of stewarding a team of that size. And so what I'm excited about, man, is like anytime I've ever been stuck for a year or two and then I've broken through to the next level, we've almost immediately hit the following one. So I know that 130 is really, really close. I'm really excited that there's people on our team that are having a lifestyle that they didn't think was possible. I'm excited to see like the spouses of agents on our team that get to go to these lake house trips or go to conferences and really understand what's possible here. So like my whole thing is like, yeah, it's cool. I write a policy, I get paid, but like I'm more motivated and inspired by seeing, a new agent write their first or second application than I am by writing 10 grand a week. Like that doesn't matter to me. That's going to happen naturally. But what I'm eager to do, man, is just find more people that are capable of having what we have.
So freaking good, man. And that heart and that culture of seeing other people is so throughout all of Symmetry from the founders down. It's so good. Grant, we're honored by your time. Thank you. I know your time is incredibly valuable. We really appreciate this. If I can do anything to pay this back, know that you've got me in your back pocket. I really, really appreciate it. Team, if we can go to the comments and just give Grant a word that you're going to take away and implement and roll with so that he can walk away knowing that he made an impact with his time. He comes here to make an impact with his time. He didn't show up to have a conversation with me. He showed up because he believed he could make an impact. And I want us to be able to demonstrate to him that we're going to walk away with stuff that we can go leverage here.
And I'm going to take you up on that, Jim. I need your help, buddy.
I'm here
I
for
got
it,
so
man.
much to learn from you, man.
I'm 100% here for it. All right, guys, I love you all. I thank you so much for believing in your goals, believing in this. Grant, thank you. This was awesome. The replay will be up on YouTube tomorrow. I'll send you a copy over, Grant, so you've got that at quick access if you want to share this with anybody. All right, let's have a good evening. Let's crush the rest of this week. Good night, y'all.